What's going on, guys? Final Pain Neuroscience video upload. And we're supposed to list three things that we learned. And I just wanted to say I really enjoyed Pain Neuroscience education. I thought it was a great break from just everything that we're going through, which is so tissue-based and very, here's a test, here's a protocol, here's range of motion, very sort of physical. I appreciate going after the mental aspect of it. I'm a big proponent of psychology, and I actually started off studying psychology, but as obviously I got into physical therapy, so I appreciated the break. The things that I really learned from this were that there's objective ways to quantify central sensitization and whether or not somebody's dealing with this, like your pain pressure threshold, your cold hyperalgesia, things like this that you can actually quantify as a measure to see whether or not somebody's experiencing this and whether or not things are moving in the right or the wrong direction, I think is a really valuable tool because what gets measured gets improved. And it's beneficial to say, yeah, you're dealing with this, but it's even better to say, this is where it was and this is where it is now, and that's fantastic. So I like that. A thing that I use a lot is the cup analogy, and I got my whiteboard out, and I'm doing a lot more drawing now, drawing of not just using my words, but drawing things out, making pictures, trying to make things more visual, and the use of the cup analogy I thought was really pretty good, and that was great. So I like the analogies. I think that an analogy is a strong way to learn, and so if you can make things into an analogy that somebody can relate to, then you can make your point, which is great. The final thing that I learned, and this leads almost into the second part of the video, was that pain neuroscience needs to be caught, not taught. And I struggle with this personally, okay? What I mean by that is this, is that I can become a lecturer, and I can just start going off. And sometimes my education can be one-sided, like I'm talking at you rather than us having a back and forth. And so that leads me into the final bit, but that would be the final thing I learned, is that ultimately, and this is a practice of mine, is that it needs to be caught, not taught. And I think that I am on a little bit of the guilty side sometimes, depending on my mood, of being a little more teachy rather than sort of getting you to an inception within your mind these ideas. Now, things that challenged my practice I thought were the following, and I wrote all this stuff down. Okay, one of the things that I stopped doing, and I've started doing, which I thought was a really great thing, was the description of manual therapy, and that manual therapy can be an adjunct to pain neuroscience if described in such a way where what you're doing is you are desensitizing the nervous system. So my manual therapy here, what am I doing here? Well, I'm getting the joints to move, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing that. That was how I would used to describe things, okay? Or that we're inducing chemical changes within your brain. And that's a great point. If I report that what we're doing here is we're getting GABA inhibition, decreased cytokines, decreased substance P, these kinds of things, does that lend itself to pain neuroscience? Or is that still kind of the biomechanical? Because I'm talking about the brain and I'm talking about what's going on. And it's not an analogy, it's physically true. So I wonder how that works in, and that's a question that I've got, is how does the description of what's going on within the brain, like brain chemistry and biochemistry and these kinds of things with manual therapy, does that lend itself to the pain neuroscience? Or is that really more mechanical? Like where does that lay? It seems as though it would be pain neuroscience-y, like what we're doing is we're desensitizing your central nervous system. How is that occurring? It's occurring because of chemistry within the brain and the pituitary and the anterior cingulate gyrus and things like this. I can get in depth with the weeds. So that was an interesting, I've stopped reporting what I'm doing physically and started to be a little more like we're down training your nervous system. Okay. Another thing which has been a challenge for me, which I appreciate, is being given the green light to talk about nutrition, to be talking about things which are not physically directly correlated with physical therapy, like within the walls of the PT clinic. And I really like that. So my background came with exercise and these kinds of things, and I initially had the mindset when I got into PT school initially that I was just going to be Mr. Do-It-All, say it all. I was going to sort of leave no stones unturned. We're talking nutrition, we're talking sleep, we're talking about all these things. Okay, but then in your time through PT school, what happens is I think they put a fear in you. I think they put a big fear in you. They're like, make sure that you stay within the walls of your PT, like know your scope of practice, know the Practice Act, know the laws. Don't go ahead and don't talk about these kinds of things. Like, stay within PT, don't overstep your bounds. And I think that they do a poor job, I think, of actually helping students to expand their willingness to engage, and they actually shrink everybody down, and they make you fearful. And so the fact that we're being reported to, in a descriptive way, not a prescriptive way, to go ahead and talk about nutrition, talk about sleep, talk about these things. I'm not diagnosing, I'm not prescribing something, but I'm giving a food for thought, and I'm kind of putting you into what the research states is the best thing for you to be doing. And I think that makes a big impact, because oftentimes when people are coming in with chronic pain, okay, as we watched with the nutrition lecture in this week's bit, it's like they're increased sugar intake. Your sugar intake is through the roof, okay? Like, where are you getting all this sugar from, okay? Tyler talked about people drinking soda at nighttime, and that they don't think that they're getting caffeine because they're not drinking coffee, but your soda's through the roof. And so having the willingness and giving the green light to talk about these things, I think, is unleashing me, which I would like to be able to do, but in the past I feel like PT school put me in a box with that. So I am appreciative of that. The final things, I kind of came up with two things for the final bit of questions that I've got are the following. Cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy's got really great evidence. It's like whenever you're looking at these chronic pain CPGs, okay, it's always got cognitive behavioral therapy as a part of it. And so going a little more in depth on, like, what is cognitive behavioral therapy? What are the tenets of it? How might we implement it? How does that get worked into with pain neuroscience? How do those two things go hand in hand? What are some tools, tips, and tricks that we can utilize in the clinic to get that going? I think would be an interesting adjunct to what we're doing. And the final bit, I think, is tips on motivational interviewing. And I think that this is kind of, we were talking about cognitive behavioral therapy, motivational interviewing, pain neuroscience education. I mean, they all go hand in hand. They're also sort of psychologically based, okay, talking about pain. But tips on motivational interviewing. Just today, if I'm being honest, I was a little frustrated at a patient's sort of inability to control their symptoms, despite us doing well in the clinic. But when you go home, where pain's out of control, yet we're doing nothing to get it under control. Like, what's happening here? And I got a little frustrated, and I feel like the feedback that I would have been given would have been to be a little more interviewee, motivational interviewing. So I feel like that would be the final thing, that if we can incorporate some tips and tricks and strategies on motivational interviewing, I think that would be the trifecta. So cognitive behavioral therapy, pain neuroscience education, and motivational interviewing. If we could work all those in, I think that would be excellent. But I just wanted to give feedback on this course. I thought the course was great. I thought this was actually one of the more enjoyable courses. I like sort of having these things. I appreciated how Tyler laid everything out. I thought it was really good. Again, I appreciate the psychological and not just the purely physical, because we do physical all day, every day, and going after the mind and the body. Connection, I think, is an important bit. Okay, well, again, thank you very much. I appreciate everybody, and thanks for watching these videos, and I hope everybody has a good time.